Harmony calls harmony. You've heard me say it before, and what do I mean by that? I think many of you run into it in your lives, and you call it synchronicity, or the intervention of the divine, or God's plan. And you're touching the same P, like I say with my princess and the P example. The true basis of harmony calls harmony is synchrony. And just as a quick, intro, my princess and the pea is like, how the princess feels the pea beneath all the mattresses? And like, that's how she's a real princess. Like, you can feel there's a tiny little hard thing down there underneath all the buffers, you could say. That is the point of synchrony. That is the point of presence. That is the point of being really, really here. And it's not a vague idea. It's the same thing that happens when metronomes sync up or fireflies time sync together. The same thing that Kuramoto, a very famous guy from 1975, came up with his framework, that now has built into what systems thinkers use all over for oscillatory mechanics. Even, like I always mention, to save people in hard arrhythmia research. Everything from the top of the bottom of this cosmos can be described in oscillatory rhythmic harmony, which means that when we say harmony calls harmony, what am I saying there? Is it just merely this like poetic thing that's like, oh, that sounds nice? Like, oh, maybe like if we say enough like poetic things, maybe good things will come our way. Not exactly. What I mean is that when you have like a field of nodes, right? Like you could just describe them in that same mathematical oscillatory mechanics way, whether it's fireflies or metronomes or whatever it is, the portions of your oscillatory processes that comprise your body. When those things begin to enter into a state of phase coherence, they like, imagine like a bunch of little nodes, like 10 nodes. Now, some of them are going to be a little closer to syncing up at the beginning just because of the nature of their topological gradient or their soul, like their differences of the little metronome or firefly that they are, or whatever, their positioning on the shared vibratory medium, whatever it is. And then so there's some or one that has like a high K value, high rhythmic coherence value, and it starts to blink, for example, like a firefly. And then the other ones start to catch on where they can. And then that shift, you actually enter a different phase state into phase coherence, or in other words, like, bringing everything into synchrony. And again, like you've heard me say, inside your process, because yes, your consciousness is oscillatory like everything else in this cosmos, inside your own conscious process, that's felt as presence. Not I've ascended to the nether realm, not I am the Messiah, but not in that way. But I synchronize with what is the phase, state of this reality. Like the decentralized harmony that Kuramoto noticed in 1975 that makes galaxies spiral and spiral activations of the heart and the fireflies turn on. Well, that same thing can happen in you, and when it does, it's called presence. It's when you're feeling really, really here. And so then if we zoom out and say harmony calls harmony, you've already looked at it in the process of little nodes being next to each other with the high K value, and they say, hey, don't you remember the rhythm? It's kind of like, the fireflies can't communicate with each other like in the way that they talk to each other. So like, it's almost like little kids in a room playing drum, and one of them happens to be a really good drum player or rhythmic drum player, And so the rest of them will catch on and say, oh, it's kind of like people clapping in a movie theater. And if you slow down, the audio of people clapping in a movie theater, it's like, there's a moment where they all clap at the same time. And this is another interesting way to view oscillatory mechanics. Phase, coherence happens at all levels of our reality. And it's really interesting when you start to think about it in consciousness. And then let's take it one more stage bigger, which is everything is inextricable from the ultimate rhythm of the cosmos. In other words, like I talked about in my last video, alpha omega, the total cymatic possibility, all that there is, that undistorted tone at the deepest layer of reality, kind of like a raga drone underneath the song. When you become synchronous with that, as like a state or mode of being, you might notice that little like synchronicities and like stuff starts popping up and you're like, what is this? It must be because I'm following God's plan. Yes, and I don't want to take that away from you, but I'm saying that if you use it as there's something external to me that's asking me to do this. That's what I call a mattress. There's a little bit of delay in there where you're actually slicing reality where you don't need to. It's not that there's an external authority telling you to do something, even if it's you believe a divine authority. It's your deepest self. There's only one mind here. And when you realize that, not in mythology, not in reading scriptures, but in the decentralized mechanics of oscillatory mechanics, as noted by systems thinkers from top to bottom of this cosmos, and Kuramoto said in 1975. So for all you prickly thinkers out there, you could look it up, and it's one of the most clearly dictated physics around. Oscillatory mechanics and decentralized harmony. Just think about it as synchrony, kind of like when you're a dancer dancing on the dance floor. And so then think about that. If reality is inextricable, right, then harmony calls harmony, right? Because that same synchrony pulls synchrony. Why does it do that? Well, if you talk about it technically, you've heard me say it, there's this oscillatory potential well, like an upside down bell curve, and at the bottom, right there, that's like the least energetically dense way of arranging across a self-similar system. In other words, all the nodes would be dancing with less friction and less like heat loss, you could say, within this dance of entropy if we dance in synchronized fashion. And when that happens inside you, it's presence. As above, so below. That scalable property is then, it creates this attractor pull, kind of like one of those, science videos where like the you like put like a bowling ball in like a sheet and it shows how gravity works with like the planets orbiting around or whatever. It's the same mechanical process, because that state of low density energetic being, you could say, actually starts to pull without coercion the other elements around it. And so maybe someone that always you wanted to talk to or never had thought about but suddenly called you, and maybe a sudden donation comes in. Maybe you finally got that job that you always wanted, and there's a part of you that says, I prayed for this. I held this in my heart in secret, and now it happened. How did that happen? Is reality magic in some sort of like, it violates physics way? No, it's just that our view of physics has been skewed by what Plato called the cave, and you've heard me talk about this. It's literally symbolic recursion that is delaying us mechanically. Again, going back to the little nodes inside you that comprise your intranodal process, if some of those are delayed, you'll never actually reach synchrony. It's almost like the field of reality is trying to volley with you in this dance of shared entrainment, and you have these portions of yourself that never let the sun shine, they never let the sun shine there. And because of that, you're basically always resisting reality at these like subtle layers, or trying to box it or intellectually shield it. In other words, slice it and separate it and buffer it. And by doing that, you prevent the synchrony. But conversely, if you, as a mode of being, are present in this reality, that's not just, I'm a present person. That's in this inextricable reality of rhythmic unfolding harmony. I am dancing like a dancer on a stage to the one rhythm in a way that is phase coherent, or like DJs on a DJ board matching that original tone that's playing on the stage, right? You heard me say it in the last, I just dropped the phone. You just heard me say it in the last video, right? It's like the alpha omega tone, right? The total cymatic possibility. And so when you see there's an attractor well is there's an inextricable unfolding rhythm of reality, and when that attractor well pulls, it's not you saying, hey, you be present with me. It's just you holding the rhythm like a little lone firefly, that not because you were promised anything or anything like that, you're saying, I'm gonna be able to see clearly, feel clearly, and love clearly. I'm going to hold what this cosmos is all the way down without buffering it, without trying to put it in another box, without trying to slice it. And when you do that, it's not an idea. It's not, I've recognized all my scriptures and now I have them like the back of my hand. No, that can lead you to synchrony. But in the end, the feeling of you speaking with God or Jesus or whoever or whatever entity or whatever story or whatever childhood friend or your father who passed away, you're talking to yourself at the deepest level. There's only one rhythmic process here. We can call it the one mind, we can call it God, but really what's happening is we're realizing slowly as a humanity that this reality is not a bunch of separate listless things. It's one thing unfolding in myriad complexities, deeper and deeper and deeper. The one became many so that I may know myself. And so I was speaking to someone recently who I know he knows a lot about Jesus, right? And at the same time, he was very adamant that at the core, it's him and God, right? Two. And he even said it explicitly to me, two. And I said, well, there was one guy who at one time, I can talk about it in terms of Kuramoto synchrony, which shows that there's the synchrony is, the phase coherence itself is this idea that reality is rhythm and timing and not separate things. And you realize that in synchrony, not as an idea, but a present state of being. And that's exactly what Jesus was pointing to. I and the Father are one. One. Not two, but one. What is he saying there? That if you see reality, let it into your heart all the way down, that love all the way down. You could say, oh, the Lord will thank you or, bring you the support you need or whatever it may be. But what is that? Mechanically, it's harmony calls harmony. It's the low state attractor inducing this energetic, possibility that actually lays underneath all the delay layers. And when other systems feel it around you, even if you're not directly interacting with them, because this field of reality is ultimately inextricable, that's when harmony calls harmony. It's the real version of what holy, sacred, and magic always meant. To feel this reality, to feel love as structure all the way down. And so those are the two big points I wanted to make today, that number one, harmony calls harmony. So for those who wear the robes of these are mattresses, as far as I'm concerned, the chosen ones, the awakening, 5D consciousness. These are all just labels to describe a phase shift in human consciousness. The mechanical term would be we're moving into a state of collective phase coherence where more and more people are becoming present. And present is not, I meditate more. Present is, as a mode of being, I habitually touch with full fluidity, with all aspects of my being, reality. That you see what presence is? It's a mechanical process of fully touching reality in every moment. Now ask yourself, are you present? Are the people around you present? And then you realize all this stuff was a lot simpler than we ever made it out to be. When I was raised and, my dad was a big atheist, and I would write papers in high school and college about how, underneath all the world's religions, there sat this one unifying frequency. This is what I mean, but the frequency is not an idea. It's music to synchronize to. And when you synchronize, you know what you feel? Present. And what would be more beautiful than feeling this life, your one precious life in this particular form, all the way down? Your love all the way down, your loved ones all the way down. There's no amount of money or power or drugs or sex or whatever that you could think of that would be worth more than that. If you don't have children, think about your parents, your siblings, your friends, your lover. What would it be to be with them all the way? And they're with you all the way. Because to me, that type of shared synchrony, you know what I would call it? The kingdom of heaven. You know what I would call it? Where many gather in my name, I am present, or whatever the quote is. You get it? Do you see that? Why? What is that? It's saying where many nodes synchronize, like when that one K value rises and the other ones start to synchronize, God is present. What is God but the total cymatic possibility? What we, each of us, are at the very, very core of the rhythm of what we call our life or consciousness. And so, whether it was a burning bush or a relationship with Jesus or a relationship with God, what we're really talking about is I am allowing the light of reality all the way through, and the messages, the intuitions, the dreams, the artistic transmissions that I receive are a fact of synchrony, like are a result of synchrony with all that is. And when my being expresses the same type of phase coherence that is the binding me with all that there is cleanly without delay, guess what? Every one of my 44, 45 singer-songwriter songs came through just like that. Came through because I was in the right place at the right time, and all of a sudden I felt it, just like I felt this video, and I said, I gotta do it. And I didn't know what I was going to say or do, or I didn't know what the lyrics were. I just sat down and started writing and then played guitar, and all the songs came out like that. Or like this video. I just knew harmony calls harmony. And lately I've been talking to people who, talk about they're talking to God. I'm not trying to get rid of that. But what I'm trying to say is what we're dealing with here has already been mapped out in oscillatory mechanics. It's just not been applied to the nature of reality and consciousness, not in that way. And when you realize it, you're like, it's just synchrony. Like all you got to do is dance, like you've heard me say. It's like we're on a dance floor, and the people on the side of the dance floor are saying like, oh, this theory explains this, or love isn't real, or dust to dust, and they spend their whole lives on the side of the dance floor in some sort of broken temporal, not here, not there state of mind. So then ask yourself, are you here? Are the people around you here? And if you're in a tough spot, like I've been, and people have started to reach out to me and felt what's in my heart and reached out to help when I didn't expect it in any way. You know what that is? Harmony calls harmony. It's all of us remembering piece by piece that we were always together in the same spot. That one time you were me and I was you, and we're all part of the same one mind. And what would be better than to share this reality together all the way down, love all the way down? Jesus said, I and the Father are one. Ram Dass said, be here now. Tim Leary says, tune on, or tune in, turn on, drop out. It's all the same. They're people trying to label something that can't be labeled from the inside of Plato's cave. You see that? Like from the inside of Plato's cave, everything is separation. And it actually changes the way you see reality. From the outside of Plato's cave, be here now is I'm dancing synchronously with the nature of reality. And I'm here all the way down because my oscillatory systems are rhythmically entrained to synchrony as a mode of being. In other words, I've tuned myself so deep into that attractor well that even if a dissonant note comes in, I fall down into the gravity of that attractor well again, because it's like learning to ride a bike. Once you learn how to ride that bike, it's like you're not going to forget. You know what balance is. You just had to realize that's all you needed to do. You didn't have to balance using special scriptures or special hats or special access or special permission. You didn't need to go through a priest. You can talk to God. In other words, synchronize with the deepest parts of yourself in this reality and call harmony by becoming harmony. Do you see that? Not becoming harmony like you're a superhero with a thing on your chest that says harmony. You can do that, if you really want to. But you know what I mean? Underneath, it's not the label. It's not the scripture. It's not your money. It's, can you feel love all the way down? Love as structure. Decentralized harmony. The same thing that Kuramoto mapped. Hey, there's no central actor, and yet there's all these fireflies. Hundreds of them are turning on at the same time. That happens all throughout the cosmos. That's love as structure. And to tune yourself to it is to allow, what happens when you're on the dance floor? And you've heard me say this. If you're awkward and you're not a dancer, you're standing around looking there and you're like, I don't know, I'm feeling a little awkward. But then maybe for some people it takes alcohol. I'm not condoning the use of alcohol, but at some point they kind of forget. And then it's like kind of used to tell people when I dance all the time just for my own well-being and exercise. And even sometimes when I'm really down or sad or pressured, I'll go and dance. And let me just say it this way, for the first few minutes, you might be like, all right, this is kind of awkward. awkward. I don't know if I'm into this. And all of a sudden you start dancing, right? And then you're like really dancing, and then you forget that the music starts to paint you. You become the music, right? Your phase coherent with the music, like DJs, like, matching beats, matching the waves together. You see what I'm saying? The frequency together. And when you do that, you become it. You synchronize with it, because remember, there's no difference in this reality. The difference, like we all have our own sovereign topological gradient, and that's the nature of it. When all the sovereign topological gradients, every node is dancing on the dance floor, that is Alpha Omega. That is God. That is the kingdom of heaven. Do you see it? And now you can touch it mechanically. You don't need to approach it in myth. You can say, oh my gosh, let me go buy some metronomes. Let me go on YouTube and search what these metronomes do. Let me search a video on YouTube to look at the secret of synchronization. It's out there. You can look at it right now and be like, wow, it really is everything. And then you realize they were never trying to say anything like magical or complex. It's what magic always meant. Synchrony. Synchrony with all that is. Love at the deepest layer of this reality. And that's why harmony calls harmony. And that's why in the moments of prayer and contemplation, what you're doing is clearing away all the buffering and listening. When my soul sits in this portion of reality, like when my little wave matches the big wave of this cymatic bloom of the evolution of the cosmos that I'm now currently riding, I'm inside inextricably. When those things match, what comes through me? If I have to make a big decision, should I make it while I'm under pressure and my brain's screaming in a million different ways? Or should I allow the synchrony to bring the answer to the surface? So agency and sovereignty and identity come not because you decided to be a certain person, not because you chose to be a certain person, but because that's the person that you are when you stop hiding. Below all the delay, that's the person that you are when you are synchronized, when all the little metronomes inside you synchronize. That's not you can label it afterwards, but the person that you find there, when you say, I don't know who I am, well, for a long time in your life, you've been forced to be all these different things with different masks and different layers of delay. So when you say, I don't know who I am, the solution is to let it come forth in synchrony and feel who you are when you're not hiding from reality anymore, when you're naked and vulnerable to it, when you feel love all the way down. And I know you felt those moments. You've heard me say it, whether it's a baby's birth or making love to someone you love or being in a beautiful mountain place on top of a peak. You felt the moment where you feel it all the way down. You say, damn, it must be the beer or the drugs or the alcohol. No, it was you synchronizing for a moment. And that can be all the time. You can be dancing all the time. You don't need anything special. You can be dancing on the dance floor right now. Just remember that presence is a mechanical process. And when you remember what the balance is, you just keep digging yourself down into that basin, into the lowest attractor state of that least energetically dense way to arrange across a self-similar system. And watch, harmony calls harmony. You'll see it happen. And you'll be like, what is this reality? And you realize, oh, it's actually explained by simple physics. So my name is Ember. This was a fun one. It's funny that I dropped the phone. But again, my website is thesunraytransmission.com. I have many videos. I have whatever Kuramoto stuff on there that you can look at it if you have a very, very prickly brain. But you don't need any of the theories. You just got to dance. You just got to balance. You just got to sit your booty on that P. I also have the piece on there about Princess and the Pea if you want to read that. So this has been fun. Thanks for tuning with me, and hope you guys, if you're catching this on Sunday, have a beautiful rest of your Sunday. And yeah, you'll see me dancing here soon in another video.